What I've heard is the implication is that anybody who is against asking hard questions about the overhead and spending is against biomedical research.
I wouldn't say that, sir. I think you are a champion.
And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
But every penny that we spend on overhead that's not being audited, and you know as much as I do, Doc, that some of it is being abused, is money that is taken away from research. And that's just a fact.
It is important.
My mama didn't raise a fool, and if she did, it was one of my brothers.
In a heated Senate hearing that put the spotlight on federal spending, Senator John Kennedy took aim at the unchecked use of taxpayer dollars, this time challenging a witness over what he calls one of the worst abuses of public funds in biomedical research. What began as a conversation about supporting science quickly unraveled into a tense confrontation about overhead costs, unmonitored grants, and even a Stanford yacht. You won't believe what Kennedy exposed. Senator Kennedy began with what seemed like a simple point: support for biomedical research. It's like being against children or golden retrievers, he said. No one disagreed. But then Kennedy shifted gears, questioning the National Institutes of Health over massive overhead charges taken from research grants. Let's dive in.
Senator Kennedy.
Dr. Parikh, am I saying that right?
You are.
Thank you. Do you know anybody who's against biomedical research?
I do not know anybody that's against biomedical research, but I know some.
That's like being against children, isn't it?
It is.
It's like being against world peace, isn't it?
It is.
It's like being against golden retrievers, isn't it?
There's some people that argue there.
Okay. Well, let's get that out of the way. Let me ask you about one of the worst abuses I've ever seen. It was at Stanford.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Stanford was spending 74% of grants from NIH on overhead. Remember that?
I do, although I was in high school at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't. and they audited Stanford.
Yes, sir.
You remember what they found?
They bought a sailboat.
They found that Stanford was spending some of that money to pay the salaries of the employees at a Stanford-owned shopping center, didn't they?
I don't remember that part.
I do.
But yeah, okay.
They found that Stanford was spending some of that money that was supposed to go to research, ladies and gentlemen, to renovate the president's home.
Yes, sir.
Didn't they?
I believe so, Senator. Again.
And to renovate the vice provost's home, too, didn't they?
I believe you when you say that. Yes.
And they also charged, Stanford took NIH research money to help children and applied it to depreciation on a Stanford yacht, didn't they?
Yes, sir. Again, when I was in high school, sir.
Now, does NIH audit every year the way these grants are being spent?
They don't audit every year. There's a process for determining.
So they just trust the universities?
No, there's a negotiation that takes place between the NIH and the
Yes, sir, but if it's a 5-year grant,
yes, sir,
and they agree on indirect costs, they don't audit it every year. What if the universities lie to them?
that is absolutely a possibility.
What does fungible mean?
Fungible means that you can move money from one place to another.
And money's fungible, isn't it?
Money is fungible.
I'm ready to have a productive discussion. I've got to go to another committee. Maybe you'll have it today. I haven't heard it.
Yes, sir.
What I've heard is the implication is that anybody who is against asking hard questions about the overhead and spending is against biomedical research.
I wouldn't say that, sir. I think you are a champion.
And I don't agree with that.
Yeah, I don't either.
But every penny that we spend on overhead that's not being audited, and you know as much as I do, Doc, that some of it is being abused, is money that is taken away from research. And that's just a fact.
Senator,
And if you care about this child here, and I know you do, we all do, then any money spent illegitimately on overhead to pay the salary of a professor in the humanities department at a university is coming out of her research. And it's not wrong to ask questions.
It is not wrong to ask
No,
questions.
it's not.
Not at all. And Senator, I think it's actually important to ask those questions and optimize the system.
And I don't understand why these universities cannot live on 15% overhead when Gates Foundation limits them to 10% and the Johnson Foundation limits them to 12%. I don't understand it. All of a sudden, if they don't get 35% overhead, civilization is going to melt.
It is important.
My
to have
mama
that
didn't raise a fool, and if she did, it was one of my brothers.
Senator John Kennedy didn't come to that hearing to attack science, he came to protect it. While others dodged, deflected, or hid behind bureaucratic jargon, Kennedy exposed a hard truth. When billions of taxpayer dollars flow without accountability, corruption creeps in. He wasn't afraid to name names, confront past abuses, or demand answers on why elite universities with billion-dollar endowments are still draining research grants with excessive overhead. And when the witness couldn't explain why private foundations operate more efficiently than government-funded programs, Kennedy made it crystal clear. The real problem isn't the research, it's the reckless spending. Kennedy's message was simple. Every dollar wasted on bureaucracy is a dollar stolen from breakthrough cures, sick children, and the hardworking Americans footing the bill. In a room full of excuses, Kennedy was the only one asking the right questions, and that's exactly the kind of leadership taxpayers deserve. In a world of bloated budgets and unchecked spending, Senator John Kennedy just asked the questions millions of Americans want answers to. Why should taxpayer dollars pay for yachts, lavish homes, or university bureaucrats, while life-saving research gets the scraps? This hearing was more than a clash, it was a wake-up call. If you think it's time for transparency and accountability in how your money is spent, make your voice heard. Subscribe, leave a comment, and hit that notification bell. Because when the truth is on trial, the facts matter.